Actually, I was going to start with exactly how it is that I'm here. Long story. My father's parents were born in England, and separate locations came here, came to America seeking a better life. And my mother's great-grandparents were born in Germany, same deal, came to Kensington and Bailey, and Kensington and Genesee, no, Bailey and Genesee Street. Anyway, and East Aurora is kind of the promised land, I would say, for this whole succession of immigrants, immigration, etc. My father was a salesman, and New York State was his territory. He sold safes to farmers to protect their records from fires, because, you know, it takes a while to get the volunteers out there, and otherwise your, you know, deeds and cattle records and stuff all burn up. Anyway, so East Aurora was the center of his territory. So my parents moved from Kensington and Eger to Oakwood in 1967 when I was 16. I was going to Hutch Tech in Buffalo for advertising art, and let's see, the East Aurora School didn't have that coursework, so East Aurora paid for me to go to Buffalo for education. Thank you, East Aurora. And from, you know, the plan was, if you went to your local high school and you were an art major, it's because you couldn't do math or you couldn't do English or whatever. But at Hutch Tech, because it was like an engineering school, it was like professional, and we had to take an entrance test to get in. So so that was a big deal to me, and it was very important for me to think that I was going to be a madman, you know, Madison Avenue, and like advertising guy, and so on. I went to Pratt for 1 year, and what I realized was that the art world, being an artist is very different from being a commercial artist. I'll throw in a little local color here. Here's my display at the 1969 East Aurora Art Fair. My sister on the right, and neighbor Liz Person there on I'll work up to this. How will I work up to this? After going to Pratt and realizing that being an artist is a very different thing, one of my teachers gave me the keys to the kingdom of art, which was the 4 keys are you go to exhibitions, you exchange studio visits, you read all imaginably related literature, and then you figure out your art. Easy. Easy. And so after a year at Pratt, I determined that I could no longer afford to go to school there, and that I was going to be an artist. And how would I get this message across to my beloved Buffalo art community? My solution was to make this arrow here, which you know, I had my revelation of being an artist on January 5th, 1971. And I thought, I'm going to make this thing. And this is interesting that Klaus Oldenburg just died. And he was a big influence at this point in my life, as, you know, big sculpture stuff. And so I planned to make this. It took me a year and a half before I got to the night before Halloween in 1972. We're coming up on 50 years for this thing. And so in the dead of the night, my friends helped me take this, and this is kind of a tricky structure. There was, I don't know, 50 pounds of lead there to cantilever you know, the back of the arrow off of the wall. Anyway, it worked. It was fluorescent reddish orangish, like here in the cover. And when the Albright was doing the Wish You Were Here Buffalo Avant-Garde show, I mentioned to Louis Grachus that you know, this thing had happened, and wouldn't it be nice if they remade it? And so in fact, he did have it remade for that show in, the show was 2012. You may have seen it. I got a big kick out of the fact that there were wedding groups that were having their big group pictures being taken in front of the arrow. So after dropping out of school in Brooklyn, I came to Buffalo to, I was, digging around, any kind of gig, working for ad agencies or whatever, and I went to a gallery, Gallery West. Russell Drish ran Gallery West on Bryant Street, I think, 1970, 71. And he said, oh, you should go to Larry Griffiths' Ashford Hollow Foundation, the ice house that he had recently bought. So Larry bought the ice house building in 1969, and I came along in 1971, and we negotiated a trade that I would trade my sculptor's assistants for studio space there. And at that point, my mother had introduced the Turgeon brothers to the Roycroft at the point that the inn was being sold. And that's when Kitty Turgeon hooked up with the Roycroft. My mother, the only nepotism that ever worked in my life, got me a waiting gig at the restaurant. So I would come out here on weekends and wait on tables, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then hitchhike back to Buffalo to be at Larry's building helping him. I also would use my time away to hitchhike to New York or to Toronto to see art galleries and museum shows. And I would go to Buff State and UB to crash classes at media studies and like Les Crim's at Buff State. And I went to the art libraries at both schools. This was luckily before you needed an ID to get in the door at school, and you could in fact still steal education. That's my education. Yeah, I love how they say, like, you went to Oxford to read history. I went to Buff State to read art history in the bound periodicals. And that's like, literally what I did. I read art history. I read Art Forum, Art in America, Studio International, etc., back to the 30s. And that's where I got my info. I also, 1971, there was a draft, sort of problem looming, and I was looking at schools in Canada. And it turned out the Ontario College of Art in Toronto only cost $300 a year as opposed to $3,000 for Pratt. And being in Canada, if I was in Canada and the draft guy came to get me, he couldn't because I'd be in Canada. Anyway, not that I don't think that public service for your nation is a good thing. I just channeled mine into culture rather than the military, ultimately. But going to school in Toronto at that time, there was an organization called A Space, which had just transitioned out of being a for-profit gallery to being a not-for-profit, and they were importing artists from New York City, California, etc., to be their programming. So that was the import-export model that I took back to Ashford Hollow Foundation, and Robert Longo was a student who had been brought to the Ashford Hollow Foundation by Joe Pannone, who was a graduate teaching assistant at Buff State, student of Dwayne Hatchett, who had a studio. Hatchett rented studio space from Griffiths. Anyway, my conversation with Longo turned into making the space, the corridor between our studios, the hall and the hall walls into a gallery. And I don't know, maybe you've heard of Hall Walls. It is coming up on its 50th anniversary in December it started in 1974, but you know, okay, 2 more years, we got 50 years on Hall Walls. I get a kick out of this history stuff. Both East Aurora and Buffalo are about to be 200 years old. I mean, Erie County was just 200 years old. I have a rock upstairs that's 1.1 billion years old. Geological time, okay, Niagara Falls started 15,000 years ago. I'm not traveling, I'm doing YouTubes of European and Asian cultural sites. I get a kick out of them. The European ones, a couple thousand years, the Chinese ones, a couple thousand years. Okay, America, what do we got? A couple hundred years old, East Aurora, a couple hundred, coming up onto it. The Roycroft, Albert Hubbard was a soap salesman for the Larkin Soap Company. Brilliant. He came up with the idea of put a dinner plate in the box of soap to sell the soap. Except he wanted to be a writer, and he sold his part of the business and went to Harvard for a year. He didn't like academia, so he went to England to William Morris's Kelmscott Manor, where Morris promoted socialist values while at the same time he's making home furnishings. And Hubbard grabbed this idea, brought it back here. There was an existing press, as I understand it, where the bar is in the inn, and Hubbard bought the press and usurped the name Roycroft, as I understand it, and kind of elbowed out the previous owners and went to town with publishing his own writing. After he outgrew the space there, this building, the print shop, was built in 1901, and as I understand it, there were 500 people making, doing the printing, binding, blah, 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 and making mission furniture in the big green building over there. So there's a tradition of progressivism that has come out of the Roycroft that I think is really cool. And the Roycroft Campus Corporation, I believe, was established 20 years ago to, as a not-for-profit, to buy back the buildings on the campus and make it as it was 100 years ago. Well, this idea of making it as it was 100 years ago, there's a lot of slippage in there. And how do you do that? I focus on this idea of a tradition of progressivism. My interest in contemporary painting is, you could call it avant-garde, except that that's a term from 50 years ago that doesn't really work anymore, because, the whole history of styles, Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Surrealism, ABAX, that's kind of burned out. I'll get to that. But what I've seen in these cultural sites in Europe and Asia is a layering of points of brilliance. I like to think that I'm another point of brilliance to layer on top of the Roycroft stuff that's, preceded me. And how did I actually get back here? I mean, the thing is, I moved to New York in 1978, and still have an apartment there. I have a wife there in that apartment, and I see her occasionally. Although we're thinking we're going to sell, and she'll come here. Won't that be nice? Okay, so I had my studio in New York for 20 years. The whole point of Hall Walls was to position me and my friends, Longo, Sandy Sherman, Michael Zwack, a whole lot of other people, to have art careers. And we, via the politics of Hall Walls, we were able to connect with Helene Weiner, who was the director at Artist Space then, and over clock doesn't work there. What time is it? Anybody?
15.
Oh, shucks. Anyway, I'll try to speed this up. So Longo & Sherman, they connected with Helene Weiner and Metro Pictures, and have had glorious careers. My career didn't go quite as gloriously. However, it's a real thing. I mean, although I haven't had a New York dealer in 20 years, I do have more than 600 works in more than 70 museums. So, you know, I feel like I'm contextualized. So contextualized that my computer has given up the ghost. So, okay, so Hollowell's launched us. There I am with Longo & Sherman, woohoo. Fast forward, 1985, the Brooklyn Museum, you know, there was this whole, we worked with the Albright, with Linda Cathcart and Bob Buck, the director. We had a wonderful relationship doing collaborative curatorial projects, etc. So Bob Buck went to the Brooklyn Museum as director and took Charlotte Kotik, and as one of their grand lobby projects, I did these 3 big paintings. And the thing about these was that I stopped using brushes when I was 20, and I finger painted. And when Bob gave me a 20-foot tall wall by 60 feet across, I thought, how am I gonna, you know, articulate the paint with these dinky digits? And so I came up with big finger tools, which are pads on the end of sticks, in order to make these. So, and I'm very happy to say that Brooklyn Museum has this painting, which is 13.5 feet tall and 21 feet across, and then the Castellani Museum has the other 2 paintings there. The thing with the big finger tools is I like collaboration. I mean, clearly Hollowell's was a collaborative project, and there's the cliche, you go to a museum, you see abstract expressionism, and you go, oh, my kid could do that. And I try to literalize that by saying, yes, your kid, you, your kid, everybody can do it. And so this was an art park in 1992, 30 years ago. And from that art park project came this one painting, 10 feet by 17 feet, used to be on this wall here. So this room here used to be called Dard Hunter Hall. Dard Hunter was a designer for the Roycroft. Had a studio upstairs. When you're done here, you can go up into the tower where my library and my painting studio is. And so this space, Jerry Castiglia was the president of Pratt & Lambert Paint Company. And Taylor Q, who had a box company here, and who was the president of the Birchfield Center board in 1992, helped me put the project that you saw before at Art Park together. It was like Taylor put up some money, and Jerry Castiglia gave me a boatload of paint, and so we made these. You know, I was in residence 2 weeks at Art Park. This one painting was, you know, big and cool. And so the space here, Jerry died a few years ago, and his widow, Barbara, gave a lot of money to put the AC in and buy these easels and turn this into an art center. So as of mid-May, 2 months ago, whatever it is, the Castiglia Art Center is a thing, and I'm telling you, so you could join if you want and have studio space. I think they brought some more of the forms that give the details about membership. In any case, I'll back up to when I returned. I moved my studio in 1999 to Rhode Island for 13 years. I we needed to not have 2 places in 2013. So we got rid of Rhode Island, and great, where do I put my studio? Move to New York for $1 zillion a month, or bingo, John McHenry with High Temp Fabrication downtown offered me free studio space. Simultaneously with my mother needing somebody to drive her to the doctor and do her shopping for her and so on. My mother's place is 200 footsteps away from here, over there. And so, you know, it was a eureka moment. I'm not gonna have a studio in New York, I'm gonna have a studio in Buffalo. And then it turned out, 2015, Roycroft bought this back from Erie County. And I heard a studio downstairs would cost me 200 bucks, 200 footsteps away from where I was staying. Okay, I'm in. And thus began my studio downstairs. I'll show you later. I run this public painting workshop out of it, where there's one painting per season. I get as many people to add paint to the painting through the course of the season. I photograph the participants and in each state of the painting and their takeaway painting. And at the end of the season, I grind through the layers to give it its characteristic look. And I make this art history book out of the documentation. So there have been about 800 people that have worked on a couple dozen paintings. I did in this spring and summer of 2020. Guess why? And anyway, so the Art Center, my studio downstairs. At one point, I started to put my library into the studio downstairs, and the books didn't fit. So I asked Kurt Moranto, our executive director, if he had more space, and he said, well, you can put them upstairs in the tower. And so my library is where Elbert Hubbard's office was. And when you're done here, you can go upstairs. And then the floor above that was Dart Hunter's studio. And that's where I'm making paintings these days. So I have two rooms downstairs that I invite you. If you didn't see this thing, this is the flyer for participating. I had some kids in there yesterday who they went thick with the paint, which is to say that it's not dry yet, and I can't put it up to photograph it until it's dry. Otherwise, I would invite you to add a layer today. But please come back. You can either call me or email me or just show up, and if the paint's dry, you can jump in. Well, okay, so the thing with this is, did I say there are three kinds of Clufffalo paintings? Clufffalo places, Clufffalo seasons, and Clufffalo numbers. And so this is, there have been 3 Clufffalo places. The Hamburg Public Library has a painting made by 150 people at Hilbert College Auditorium in 2014. That was with Aaron Ott, one of the earlier public art initiative projects. In 2017, I did a project at Art Omai in Ghent, New York, near Albany. 130 people. This painting is, oh, I know. You know what? I'll show you what happened to this painting. This painting is called Taylor is With Us. Taylor Q died like right after I did this project. Very sad, plane crash. So this painting is like 10 feet tall, and it's in the collection at the Birchfield Center. You know, you may run into it there. It's a painting that I love a lot. So here is you know, the Hamburg painting, Kathy Vogel, cool. Anyway, and then okay, this is the Art Omai project, and now the Art Omai painting that used to be on that wall is hung at the New York State Museum in Albany. Now these are these are the spines of the books for all of the Clufffalo seasons, and I'm very proud of my spines. And here are people working on the public painting project. And this is a Clufffalo number. My big brag here today is that I've made 800 paintings since I've been in residence here. And if you go online, you can see at least 700 of them, you know, in PDFs. You know, I'm proud of them. I like them. You know, and here's the thing. The kind of the ideology of Elbert Hubbard was head, heart, and hands. You know, this engagement of, you know, the full person. And I have come to see my mission is effecting the true, the good, and the beautiful. You know, old concept, you know, 2,000 years old. But for me, coming to understand fully the true, the good, and the beautiful is something that took me 20 years. And, you know, finally it's like, oh, all these pieces put together, the puzzle goes together in a way that makes sense. And then what? What do we got here? Nothing. And I guess that's the end of that part. You know, I was going to put up another PDF that has all those number paintings, but we're getting to the end of the line here. So the Roycroft is a great resource. The Art Center, come and paint in the public painting workshop. Go into my library, enjoy. You know, I'm not a lending library, but you can sit there and read the books. I also have a rock collection. You know, maybe you know this Asian tradition of scholar stones. I'm a big fan of Chinese scholar stones. When you go upstairs, you will see both Chinese scholar stones and not Chinese scholar stones. Let's see what else. So come back and participate in the workshop. Come and do the library, and what else am I going to invite you to do? And I have my treasure vault downstairs in the event anybody needs any paintings for their walls. and so now you can ask questions.